कदामह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपादकमलं श्रीगुरु वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकाकांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. All right, I would like to begin class. I'm sure everybody looks like nobody's new here, but still I thought if there's anybody new who does not know, I would like to start the class by establishing the identity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? The scriptures say Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. So he's not different from Radha and Krishna. He's the combination of Radha and Krishna. So what do the scriptures say about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? The Srimad Bhagavatam says Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sango Pastra Prashadam Yajnai Sankirtanam Prayes Yajanti Yakhi Sumedasha. That is Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the name of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he's Krishna himself. He's accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. The Garuda Purana says, Aham Purno Bhavishyami Yuga Sandhyo Vishesha Shata Mayapure Navadvipe Bahishwami Sachisuta. In the first part of Kali Yuga, I will appear in my complete spiritual form in Mayapur Navadvip and become the son of Sachi. The Vishnu Sahasranama says, Suvarna Varna Hemango Varanyas Chandanan Gadi Sanyasakrit Samo Shanto Nishta Shanti Parayana. Translation: he has a golden complexion. Hemango, he has the appearance of molten gold. Varanya, he is exquisitely beautiful. Chandanangi, the Lord's body is smeared with sandalwood pulp. Sanyasikrit, he accepts the renounced order of life. Sama, he is fully self-controlled or equipoised. Shanta, he is completely peaceful. Nishta, he is rigidly fixed in the chanting of the name of Krishna. Shanti Parayana, he is the highest abode of devotion and peace, and he silences the impersonalist philosophers. So we have a lot of scriptural evidence to say who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. In order for it to be an avatar, it has always got to be backed by the scriptures. And scriptural reality is beyond our material senses, so we are not able to understand it. So there is no room for speculation or imagination. Everything has to be substantiated by scriptural evidence. And the only way to understand scriptural reality is to hear from people who have seen that world or who have come from that world. So all knowledge has to be passed. Initially came from Krishna himself. It was revealed to the first created being, that is Lord Brahma. Tene Brahma Radeye Adikavaye. So all knowledge has to be received through disciplic succession and through Shastra and through the Acharyas. And all the knowledge is recorded in the Shastras, but even though the information is there, we cannot understand it just by reading. We have to have a guru, someone who explains it to us. Therefore, just reading the book is not enough. And even if it's material subjects, even for A, B, C, D, somebody had to teach us, either a parent or a teacher has to teach us the sounds of the alphabet. So even such a simple thing as that, we need somebody to teach us. We can't just conclude on our own. And so, even though all the published matter is there, it still needs to come from disciplic succession. It still needs to be explained by a guru in order for it to make sense. because you cannot be a surgeon just by reading a book. You have to practice under some surgeon. So even in material occupations, people have to learn from somebody. People cannot just read a book and do it. So, and Shastra is even more important. Spiritual matters are so important that we have to get it from the right authority, from the right place. And in the Bhagavatam, Krishna's original personality is clearly stated, that he's the original person. He's not an avatar, he's an avatari, where all other incarnations come from. The Bhagavatam verse, Ete cham sakala pumsa, Krishna astu Bhagavan Swayam, clearly says that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. He is the original personality of Godhead. But most of us did not understand this until Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We saw it in the light of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, and Prabhupada explained to us, and only then we were able to make that connection. So it's very, very important to get it. And Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes as a Chana avatar. He's the hidden avatar in the Kali Yuga. He came in the guise of a devotee to teach us how to be good devotees, by practical example teaching us. So if he came as God, then if people could obviously understand he's God, then there would be no purpose to it. So he had to come in a hidden form. So even though all the Shastric evidence is there, it is not so obvious. It has to be pointed out. And they say that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advent is so rare, he comes once in the day of Brahma. And just to give an idea of how long that is, the 4 yuga cycles, Satya, Treta, Dwapara and Kali, together is one Divya Yuga. So 71 such Divya Yugas form one Manvantara. There's 14 such Manus. And in the 28th Divya Yuga of Vaivastaka Manu, which is 4,320,000,000 years, that's how that duration is. That's one day of Brahma, that Krishna appears at the end of Dwapara Yuga. Krishna himself in his original form appears in Dwapara Yuga. Although many incarnations keep coming, but Krishna as an original personality of God, it comes once in a day of Brahma. And then the following Kali Yuga, immediately after Krishna's appearance, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes. So that's just the way the rotation is. That's how. So it's so very rare. So we are very fortunate that we are born in this period where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come and Prabhupada has come to explain all this to us. So we are very, very fortunate to be born in this particular Kali Yuga. And there are many reasons why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. There's internal reasons and external reasons. I'll just go over it very briefly. The internal reasons are, the external reasons are, he came to establish Yuga Dharma because he's the Yuga avatar, and congregational chanting of the holy name is the Yuga Dharma. And the second reason was that he wants to fulfill his words of the Bhagavad Gita, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata. Whenever there's a decline of religion, I will advent. So he came in the age of Kali, which is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. They say there are 2 characteristics in the age of Kali. People are critical and people are hypocritical. So everybody is willing to criticize other people and they don't follow what they say. They preach one thing and they do another thing. So that's the general characteristic. Pretty much everybody is like that. So, to teach us by example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. And then the third reason is to fulfill the prayers of Sri Advaitacharya. Advaitacharya was praying fervently to the Lord, please come. The age of Kali is so disturbing that these people will only learn from you if you personally come. So those were the external reasons. The internal reason was to understand the glories of Srimati Radharani. Krishna wanted to know what does Radharani feel, and he needed to hear. It was always the object of worship. He wanted to know what her feelings were. He also wanted to experience the wonderful qualities about him that only Radharani can experience and relish. So he wanted to see it from the other side. So that was the second reason. And the third reason was he wanted to feel her happiness because he always felt she felt more happy than him. Even though their happiness was ever increasing, she was always feeling more happy than him. So he wanted to see how is it from the other side. So for those 3 reasons, those were his internal reasons for coming. And he came in the mood and complexion of Srimati Radharani. So that is called Radha Bhava Duti Sulilita Noemi Krishna Surup. He came in the looks of Radharani. He was molten gold, but he's actually Krishna himself. So it's a combination of Radha and Krishna. And how do we get all the information? We get the information of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's one of the authorized biographies written by Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And Prabhupada considered this so important, this literature, that he translated the Chaitanya Charitamrita in just 18 months. He just took 1.5 years to finish the entire. So that's how much importance he gave and how important he thought it was that people should understand this. And what do we learn from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's coming? The main things are, we learn that Sri Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is the original personality of Godhead. And also the Vrindavan Dham is not different from Krishna, and it's very worshipable as Krishna. And then we also learn that the worship of the cowherd damsels of Raja is the highest form of worship. And of all these cowherd damsels, Radharani is the highest. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the authorized book for us to understand about Krishna. It's the spotless Purana. Srimad Bhagavatam, Amalam Puranam, Puranam Amalam. It's the spotless Purana. And the goal of life is to achieve Krishna Prem by rendering loving devotion to Krishna and service to Krishna. And so that was the main reasons to prove all this, was he came to reveal all this himself. And Krishna wrote, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wrote only 8 verses, what we know today as the Shikshashtakam prayers. But he left a lot of literature. The Goswamis who had direct descendants, the 6 Goswamis who were the direct disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they wrote several books, and all the information that we have about the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy comes from these books. So Mahaprabhu came, what no other incarnation came. He came to give pure love of Krishna, pure love of God to all the Kali Yuga jivas, and to teach that Krishna is the greatest treasure in our lives, and that was his mission, to give this to the people. Vaishnava Tattva is summarized in 5 conversations that Mahaprabhu had with 5 great personalities in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. 2 of them were brothers, Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. One was a royal Purohit called Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Another was the famous impersonal sannyasi Prakashananda Saraswati. And the last of the conversations was Ramananda Roy, who was the governor of a southern province in King Prataparudra's kingdom. So the Lord instructed Rupa Goswami in Prayag on the banks of the Ganges in a place called the Shashwamedha Ghat. And Rupa Goswami was such an elevated soul, he already knew the heart of Mahaprabhu. It says Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam, it's in our prayers, that he already could sense what Mahaprabhu said. So he did not ask any questions, but the Lord instructed him for 10 days in the science of devotional service. And later, Rupa Goswami wrote all that knowledge in the book called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Briefly, the Lord mentioned about the 8.4 million species. There are moving species, unmoving, that the human life is the greatest, that among materialists, very few people are liberated, and among liberated souls, there are very few people who are bhaktas or devotees, and how important it is to plant the seed of bhakti in one's heart and to worship and to that for the plant to come up. And how do we water the plant? By hearing and chanting. And he talked about the different rasas ending with the love of God. With Rupa Goswami, the Lord spoke for 2 months in Banaras. And for our sake, Rupa Goswami asked many questions of the Lord. He said, who am I? Why am I bothered, troubled with the threefold miseries? What is the duty of a liberated soul? He asked many questions of the Lord, which the Lord answered. And the gist of it is the Lord said, we are spirit souls, eternal servants of God. Jivara Swarupa Hoy, Krishnara Nityadas. That we are always the eternal servant of the Lord, and our duty is to serve the Lord. He talked about the threefold miseries, Adhyatmika, Adidaivika, Adibhautika, so those 3. And then he talked about the different avatars, the Purusha avatars, Lila avatars, Guna avatars, Yuga avatars, Shaktyavesha avatars. So he talked about all that. And he also gave the meaning of the Atmarama verse in 61 different ways. So it was, I'm just giving the gist of the conversations. The conversations themselves are too long and they're books in themselves. The third conversation was with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was in the King Prataparupa's kingdom. He was the Raj Purohit. He was the priest of the kingdom. And they had their famous conversation in Jagannath Puri. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke about Vedanta philosophy for 7 days, and the Lord was just listening. He did not ask a question. Finally, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "Do you understand what I'm saying? Why have you not asked a single question?" And the Lord said, "I understand Vedanta, but I don't understand your explanation. The Vedanta is like the sun, but your explanation is like the clouds covering the sun." So then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, even though he was a learned scholar, he was still humble. He said, "So then can you give me an explanation of the, explanation?" And the Lord gave an explanation of the Vedanta philosophy, and he told the critical points of why Mayavadi philosophy is bad. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya at that point said, "Can you explain the Atmarama verse?" And the Lord said, "You tell me your understanding first, and then I will give my explanation." So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, in 9 different ways, 9 meanings he gave to that word. And the Lord then gave 61 different explanations without touching a single one of his explanations, so very different from what he had said. At that point, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya realized this is the Supreme Lord himself. Nobody can explain this like this. It has to be the Supreme Lord. And he had great faith and he surrendered. And after he surrendered, the Lord showed him his Sadbhuja form, the form of Krishna with the flute and the 2 arms, and then 2 arms with the Kodandarams, with the bow and arrow. And then the sannyasi pot and, with the 6-arm form, which is called the Sadbhuja form. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, of course, became a wonderful surrendered devotee of the Lord. And then he wrote several verses and many songs in praise of the Lord. So he became a wonderful devotee at that point. And then the next conversation was with Prakashananda Saraswati. He was a great impersonalist. And this conversation happened in Banaras too. And the Lord was just sitting in a place where where the devotees were washing their feet very humbly. And Prakashananda Saraswati saw great effulgence coming from the Lord, and he went to the Lord and he held his hand and said, "Please come and sit with us." And he took him to a platform where the sannyasis were sitting. So by rendering that service, he became eligible for the Lord's mercy, because he was attracted to the Lord and he gave some service. But in the beginning, Prakashananda Saraswati was very argumentative with the Lord. But after the conversation, the Lord explained all the philosophy, then all the Maya, and he said, "Why are you always chanting and singing like a fool? You have to study Vedanta, you're a sannyasi, you're in the great Bharati line of sannyasis, why aren't you, saying something better?" And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I'm a fool, and my spiritual master taught me a line from the Naradiya Purana, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, 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 Gatiranyata. In this age of Kali, there is no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way. Only the Lord's name will deliver people. And then afterwards a great discussion followed, and Mahaprabhu explained all the principles of Vedanta philosophy, and all the sannyasis were convinced, and they left their Mayavad philosophy and they joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they also joined the Sankirtan movement. And the last conversation is with Ramananda Roy, who's Vishaka Saki in Krishna Leela. And he was a very wonderful devotee of the Lord, and he said, it was again a form of a dialogue. He said, all the questions as well as the answers are coming from you. I'm just an instrument, I'm just a puppet. You are speaking through me. So they again had a long conversation, and the Lord first said, what is the beginning? They talked about Varnashrama Dharma, they talked about following scriptural injunctions, and then the Lord was not satisfied. Then he said, giving up everything for the pleasure of the Lord, So they said, Sarva Dharma Paritajya Mahayekam Sharanam Vaja, that, give up everything for the Lord's sake, do everything for the Lord's pleasure. That the Lord still said, oh no, continue. Then he said, give up hankering and lamentation, Brahma Bhuta Prasanna Atmana Shochajina Kankshati, supported that. But then the discussion moved even further. They spoke about the 5 rasas. Then they spoke about the gopis' way of worshipping Krishna being the highest. Then they spoke about Radharani. And then he said the way that Radharani's Mahabhav, she's the greatest devotee. At that point, Mahaprabhu was satisfied, and that conversation ended like that. So this way, these 5 conversations cover most of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Tattva. Then Mahaprabhu came to give something, pure love of God, that no other person, and only God can give pure love of God to other people. Nobody can give love of Krishna other than Krishna himself. So Rupa Goswami concluded Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has to be Krishna himself. And so, there are two kinds of bhakti. If you do Vaidhi bhakti, you go to Vaikuntha. That is following the scriptural injunctions, doing everything by scripture will take you to Vaikuntha. And in Vaikuntha, there's only two rasas. There is Shanta rasa and Dasya rasa. Everybody in Vaikuntha worships the Lord with awe and reverence. So Narayana doesn't have a friend or a father or a mother. Lakshmi Devi serves in the mood of a servant, as a Dasya. In the 9 Navavida Bhakti, the example is given is Lakshmi. She serves the Lord's feet all the time in servitude. So she's the example of Dasya rasa. So all the residents of Vaikuntha serve in the mood of awe and reverence. So in the Gopakumara story that Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he goes to Vaikuntha and he's still not satisfied. He wants something more. And that's when he goes beyond Vaikuntha. So you have to have Raganuga Bhakti in order to go to Goloka Vrindavan. That is the highest planet in the Vaikuntha planets. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give knowledge of that place. And we have to get the only way to go to Vaikuntha is to follow in the mood of the gopis. You have to follow in one of the footsteps of one of the residents. That's the only way to go there, no other way. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making it open to all of us by giving us that knowledge, so that he has come. So it's a wonderful, wonderful gift for the people of Kali Yuga that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving. And they said Lord Shiva wanted to join Vrindavan to see the Ras Leela, but he was not allowed. So he had to take bath in the Yamuna and become a gopi. So he's known as Ardhanarishwar. He became a gopi, and only then he could be the keeper of the Rasamandal. He became the keeper of the Rasamandal. And goddess Lakshmi also wanted to go there, but she was also not allowed. And Krishna finally, and she started doing severe austerities. Then Krishna agreed to keep her as a golden hair on his chest as Shrivasta, and that's how she got in. But nobody can go into Vrindavan until you follow in the mood of one of the residents of Vrindavan in one of the 5 rasas, and that's the only way to get in. So Krishna takes birth on his own will. He's Sachidananda Vigraha. We are made up of 5 elements. And Krishna doesn't really need to take birth. In different incarnations, Krishna had appeared from a pillar as Lord Nrsimhadev. He appeared from the nose of Brahma as a boar incarnation. So different ways, he has different ways of appearing. When he saved Gajendra, he came flying on Jatayu straight, as Lord Vishnu. So he doesn't need to take birth in order to appear. But when he comes to this world out of pity for us, to establish Dharma, he takes birth. And as Mahaprabhu, he came, his parents were Jagannath Mishra and Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata. So he came as their son and he was born in Mayapur, in Navadvip, Mayapur. And so we need, so when he was a little child, I don't know how much time I have, when he was a little child, he was playing in the yard as a little baby, some of the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. And one day Mother Sachi came out to check on a child, and there was a big snake, and he was coiled in the arms of a snake, and she really got scared and started screaming, and all the neighbors came and looked, and he was coiled in a snake. And so they didn't know what to do. They said if we try to shoo it away, the snake might bite the child. So they just chanted loudly, Garuda, Garuda, and then somehow the snake went away and they were relieved. So, and he used to cry. When people started chanting, he would stop crying. So even as a baby, he had such attraction for Harinam. And then when he was a toddler, there was a Brahmin who came visiting. And when the Brahmin came to Jagannath Mishra's house, and he cooked, and he was offering prayers and offering the food to Gopal, his Gopal deity, the little Chaitanya Nimai came and ate the prasad, ate the bhoga. So then Jagannath Mishra was very upset, says, cook again, please, we don't want you to. And he said, no, I can starve, I'm a sannyasi, I don't need to eat. But he said, no, in our house you should cook. So again, the second time he cooked, the same thing happened. Third time, same thing happened. So finally they got so frustrated, they locked everything door and he cooked. But by then, mysteriously, everybody fell asleep. And again, the same thing happened. But at that point, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed himself, his form as Krishna. So the Brahmin was the first one to recognize that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he said, this is a secret thing, don't tell anybody, this knowledge has to be kept a secret. So from then on, the Brahmin didn't travel, he stayed in Navadvip, and every day he would come and take darshan of the Lord, but he didn't tell it to anybody, he kept it to himself. And then when he was 8 years old, he went to, he went to school with the school of Gangadas Pandit. So that was his teacher. And he was very naughty as a child. He would go to the bathing ghat, and they had separate bathing places for men and women. So he would exchange the men's clothes and put it where the women were bathing and vice versa. And when they came out bathing, they wouldn't have their clothes and they would be very upset about the whole thing. So then they would complain to Mother Sachi and Jagannath Mishra, look what your son is doing. Similar to how the residents of Vrindavan used to complain to Mother Yashoda about Krishna stealing butter or doing some naughty stuff. Similarly, the residents of Navadvip would complain to his mother and father. And then when the girls came to worship the Lord on the banks of the river Ganges, to get a good husband, he would say, give me the offerings and I will give you a good husband. Don't worship Lord Shiva and Durga, they are my servants. And they would get very upset. And he would say, if you don't give it, you'll get old husbands and you'll get co-wives. But if you give me the things, I will make sure you'll get a handsome, rich husband who's, and a powerful husband. And then they would just give it to him, the things, and go away. But they would complain, but at the same time, if the parents started, chasing him, he would say, look here, your mother and father are coming, run away. They really did love him. They didn't want him to get into trouble. So it's similar, it reminds us of Krishna Katha. The next, when he was 16 years old, there was a Digvijay Pandit who came to Navadvip, and he had the habit of defeating all scholars who had been all over India. And so he came to Navadvip because it was the hub of many scholars. At that time it was the seat of learning. And when he came, one day he sees Nimai. He was called Nimai Pandit then. He was a grammar teacher, and he had some students. And he said, oh, you are the great Nimai Pandit. And he said, no, I'm not a Pandit. I'm just the son of the Jagannath Mishra. They just out of affection call me Pandit. So of course this scholar wanted to engage in a in a competition with Mahaprabhu. And so then Mahaprabhu said, okay, I heard that you're a great scholar. Can you make some, the Ganga was flowing, make some verses on Ganga, and I want to see how your scholarship is. I've heard so much about you. And he was, of course, and on the spot he made 100 verses in praise of Mother Ganga. So when he did that, afterwards Nimai Pandit said, I see some flaws and some merits in he took one particular verse and he chanted that verse. And he said, how did you remember? He said, oh, I am a Shrutitar, I can remember things, but that's okay. And he just said, I see some flaws and I see some defects. And he said, you have done it very beautifully. He praised it a little bit too. But then he said, I see some mistakes. And he said, what are the mistakes? Because he was not used to criticism. And then there were many mistakes, the subject and the predicate, there were grammar mistakes. But besides that, the main thing was, in that verse, Keshav Kashmiri had described Lord Shiva as Bhavani Bharta. Bhavani Bharta is the husband of Bhavani. And he said there's a mistake there, because the word Bhavani means, Bhava means Shiva. Bhavani means wife of Shiva. So the word Bhavani already says she's the wife of Shiva. So saying Bhavani Bharta, he said the point, it's like you describe, the way it is when you say Bhavani Bharta, it says that husband of Lord Shiva's wife. It looks as if Shiva's wife has two husbands. Because already she's Lord Shiva's wife as Bhavani. And then Bhavani Bharta, when you translate it, it's like husband of Lord Shiva's wife. And all his students started laughing at that point, And so he got very insulted, very humiliated, because nobody had defeated him up until that point. And that night he just couldn't sleep, he was crying, and he was telling Goddess Saraswati had given him a boon that I will always be on your tongue. Why did this happen to me? You betrayed. And he was crying. But then Goddess Saraswati appears that night and said, that man who defeated you is no other than my master. So I am getting my powers from him. So actually today it's a very good auspicious day for you. Your learning has reached successful because he got defeated by the Supreme Lord himself. So at that point he comes to his senses and he's regretful and he surrenders to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pleased with him. And of course Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very munificent, is very forgiving, and he takes him, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's glories even grow further. They're saying just by hearing about the Lord one can be transformed. And there are certain examples in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in it. When the Lord was coming back from Jagannath Puri, he wanted to visit Vrindavan, and he left Jagannath Puri. And before that, an incident happens. Gadadhar Pandit, who's very, very close to the Lord, and he has taken Kshetra Sannyas, that he will not leave Jagannath Puri, he will always worship Lord Tota Gopinath. That was his vow. But when Mahaprabhu was ready to leave, he just couldn't bear the separation, so he followed Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu said, no, you cannot follow him. You have to take a vow, so you have to come and serve here. But he said, I don't care about my vow. It's more important for me to follow you. And he just leaves that place. And he breaks his vow. But after he has crossed the river, Mahaprabhu says, no, you're going to bring me a bad reputation. And he said, no, it has nothing to do with you. I just want to go visit Mataji. I want other things. It's nothing to do with you. But then the Lord says, it will please me if you stay and do your service. Once he says that, he cannot displease the Lord. So of course he comes, and he faints. When the Lord he faints, he just loses consciousness. And the Lord tells Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, take care of him and make sure that he goes back to Jagannath Puri and does his service, and the Bhattacharya does that, So this shows two things, that vows are not important, love and surrender is more important at the highest level. Of course, for us, rules and regulations are important, but at the highest level, it's not rules and regulations, but unconditional surrender to the Lord. And it also shows the Lord's love for his devotees. They said the Lord was hurting more than Gadadhar Pandit. But he wanted to keep his vow. Similar to how in Kurukshetra war, the Lord wanted to keep Bhishma's vow. He didn't care if he broke his vows, but he wants to save his devotees' vow. So he's so kind and merciful to his loved ones that he will protect their vows. That's how the kind, merciful the Lord is. How much time? So then there is an incident of a cruel governor who's a meat-eater, drunkard, but he hears Mahaprabhu's kirtan and he hears about Mahaprabhu. And just by hearing about Mahaprabhu, he's transformed. And he comes and he says, I'm sorry, but I can help you cross the river. And he gives protection and he helps the devotees cross that bad, where there are dacoits and where there's, where it's not safe. So he actually serves the Lord. Similarly, there's another situation where Nawab Hussain Shah was the ruler of Ramakeli at that time, who was the ruler of Bengal. He hears about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming with this huge party of followers. And he's ready to, he says, who is this person? He asked one of his courtiers, his name is Keshava Chatri. I hear that there is sannyasi following with a lot of, and he's afraid that he might do something to the Lord, because this ruler is a Muslim ruler, very intolerant. He's very punishing anybody from another faith. So he said, oh, he's just an ordinary sannyasi with a few followers, nothing much. People just exaggerate and make a big deal. You don't have to worry. But then Nawab Hussain Shah said, why are you lying to me? He's a great soul. I can tell he's a great soul. And this Keshav Chatri is amazed that he's praising the Lord. But he still sends a letter through a Brahmin asking the Lord, please leave Ramakeli. It's dangerous for you to be here. It's not safe, so you need, And that spot in Ramakeli is when Rupa and Sanatana Goswami meet with the Lord and get a darshan of the Lord. And the Lord puts his feet on their head and blesses them and accepts them as his disciples, So they say that transformation can happen just by listening about the glories of the Lord. And simply by chanting sincerely, we can get purified. And eagerness, and the signs of purification is there's an eagerness to serve the Lord and his devotees. And then one regrets one's past action and one wants to be reformed. That is the sign of reformation, that the holy name is working. And to taste the love, that taste of loving and serving God comes from serving great souls, they say. So whenever we serve the great devotees of the Lord is more pleased than when we directly serve the Lord. So there are many examples of that. Devanand Pandit, who had insulted Shiva's Pandit, once, because Shivas Pandit was very emotional during his Bhagavatam class, and his disciples just throw him on the road. And Shivas Pandit is hurt, but he doesn't say anything and quietly goes home. But the Lord is very upset. So Devanand Pandit is not, the Lord is not happy with Devanand Pandit. And even though he's a great scholar of Bhagavatam, he loses his potency. But then Devanand Pandit is very devoted to Vakreshwara Pandit, who's another great devotee of the Lord. So whenever Vakreshwara Pandit is to dance, Devanand Pandit is to protect him. Whenever he fell on the ground, he would catch him before he fell or passed out. So he served him in many different ways, and the Lord was pleased with that service. And the Lord told Devanand Pandit, because you served Vakreshwara Pandit, I'm pleased with you. And he accepts him and forgives his past offense. So that's the way of getting close to the Lord, is to serve the great devotees of the Lord. So when you serve great devotees of the Lord is pleased, more than when we serve directly. And so when the devotees came, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to Navadvip after 5 years, the residents of Navadvip were so happy to see him. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it was similar to the joy that the residents of Vrindavan felt when they saw the Lord at Kurukshetra after many years, when they had not seen him for many years. And the Lord went to Kulyagram and Shantipur, and where he met with Srivas Thakur and he met with Advaita Acharya. And Srivas Thakur, that famous incident of he says, who maintains, and he says 1, 2, 3, if the Lord doesn't provide, I jump. That incident happened during this time at Kulya. And then in Advaita Acharya's house he stays, and his mother comes to see him, because his mother comes, because he had not seen her son in many years. And she cooks for him different kinds of spinach, because spinach is his favorite food. And they said in the book, she made 20 kinds of spinach preparations, and the Lord ate it. And then the others ate the Lord remnants, and everybody was very happy. And while they were there, they celebrated the appearance day of Madhavendra Puri, who's another great Acharya in our line. And they said Madhavendra Puri is a desired tree in the Kalpavraksha of, he's a Kalpavraksha in the Kunja, confidential Kunj in Vrindavan. And even where the Sakis and the Manjaris are not allowed, he is there in that Kunj. And so he appeared in this world as Madhavendra Puri. And he was the first one to talk, he in the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya, Madhava Gauda Sampradaya, that's our Sampradaya, Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya. He was the first to reveal the perfection one can achieve in the Madhurya Rasa. Until then, that was not known. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Ramuna, he spoke about Madhavendra Puri, the pastimes while discussing. He recited this one verse that Madhavendra Puri recited during his last days on earth. And that prayer was that Radharani offered to Krishna in separation when he went to Mathura. She's asking, "O Mathura Nath, what should I do?" So it's a beautiful prayer which ends with, "O Mathura Nath, what should I do?" And they say that Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says only 3 people know the full meaning of that prayer. One is Radharani herself, because she spoke the prayer. The other one is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is Krishna who has come in the form of, with the Mahabhava of Radha, the feelings of Radharani. And the third is Madhavendra Puri. So that's how he has a unique and exalted position in our Sampradaya. So Madhavendra Puri has such a high place in the Sampradaya. And if it was not for Prabhupada, we would not have known about this Gaur Leela, we would not have known anything about this. So I would like to end this class by reading a couple of these songs that 2 Vaishnavas have written. One is Yadi Gaura na hoito. This is written by Vasudeva Ghosh. If Lord Gaura had not appeared as the Yuga Avatar in this age of Kali, then what would have become of us? How could we have tolerated living? Who in this universe would have ever learnt about the topmost limits of loving mellows that comprise the glory of Sri Radharani? Who would have had the power to render ecstatic devotional service that follows in the footsteps of the damsels of Raja? Indeed, the clever expertise of the Raja Gopis is a prerequisite for entering the supremely sweet forest of Vrinda Devi. Oh, please sing again and again the glorious qualities of Lord Gauranga. Just try to keep your heart simple. Not even one person within this ocean of nescience has ever seen such a magnanimous personality as he. Even though I chant the holy name of Lord Gauranga, somehow I still have not melted in ecstasy. How then have I maintained the burden of this body? How has the Creator fashioned this body with a stone in place of Vasudeva Ghosha's heart? I like the second prayer even better. This is Yadi Prabhupada na hoito. This is written by His Holiness Jayapatak Swami Maharaj. If Prabhupada had not come, what would have happened? How could we have passed our lives? Who else would have distributed the unlimited mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Gauranga all over the world? What other compassionate person would have endeavored to deliver the miscreants, sinful, impersonalist, and voidist people in the West? Who else would have come to distribute Harinam to them? Who else would have come forward to transform them into civilized beings? Who else would have taught them how to worship the deity form of Lord Hari day and night with Aarti Kirtan, and how to conduct the Ratha Yatra and other grand festivals? Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita contain the essence of the nectarian mellows of love of Godhead. Who else would have explained these scriptures so clearly and beautifully? Who else would have tolerated all difficulties and distributed Harinam with a pleasant heart? Who would have given us the dhams such as Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Jagannath Puri? The teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu constitute the greatest and the most auspicious treasure. Who else would have engaged us in constantly practicing and preaching it? Shri Shri Nitai Gaura are desired trees of love of Godhead, desiring a drop of their mercy. Jaya Pataka's heart insistently take shelter of your divine grace. So I think it's a beautiful prayer by Jaya Patak Maharaj. I would just like to offer one comment. You know, this coronavirus thing is going around. And I was the there. That's confirmation for you. I know a lot of you know Satyanarayan Prabhu. I remember. Do you know His Grace Satyanarayan Prabhu? I think most of you know, right? He was in this our temple some years ago, you know. And I remember him once saying that Prabhupada said that in the Sankirtan movement, China would be the last to come, and when they came in, they would come in huge numbers. Because remember that prayer is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that every town and village there will be Harinam Sankirtan. And that, you know, in Russia, we didn't think in the former Soviet Union we could ever do it. But then after the communist government fell, now Niranjan Maharaj and a lot of the Maharajas are preaching exclusively in those countries. And there's a lot of devotees in those countries, in Russia, Ukraine. And China, I heard there is, but it's underground. It's not open yet. But maybe this virus thing will open up China. I don't know. Because Satyanarayan Prabhu said that, Prabhupada said China would be the last one to come, but when they came, they'd come in huge numbers. That's what Prabhupada's prediction was many years ago. So I'm just reflecting on that. You know, maybe when these disasters happen, maybe this is an incentive for the people to, you know. And they said that the Sankirtan movement will happen anyway because the Lord desires it. So whether we do something about it or not, but if we help and assist the Lord's mission, it is to our complete, you know, purification. It is for our benefit. If we can somehow assist in the Lord's mission, it will be very, very good for us. So on that note, I would just like to end class. You know, and if anybody has any questions, I think there's only 5 minutes left. Yes, bro.
I have a question. You mentioned that Lord Chaitanya revealed himself Brahman, and that other people described him as a great soul, and I would think his immediate associates knew who he was, just on some level.
Yeah, a few of them knew.
The general public, Lord Chaitanya was doing congregational chanting, I guess getting some resistance from English, but in general, people in general, did they
They thought he was a great devotee of the Lord. Even the history textbook, until I came to the West and read Prabhupada's book, I didn't know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was God himself. The way we were taught in history books in India, there is a chapter called the Bhakti Movement. And that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a great saint, was an acharya, like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and all the acharyas. He's also listed as an acharya. Like Vallabhacharya, there's a lot of people that happened in that Bhakti Movement time. And that now we understand, because when the Lord comes down, he brings his entire entourage. And that's why that surge of bhakti was there in there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord himself. But that's not public knowledge. Until we read Prabhupada's book, maybe in Bengal it was known, I don't know, I'm not a Bengali, so I don't know if it was known in Bengal. But as a teenager in school, I remember them saying that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a great saint. He was an acharya, that's how it was portrayed. It was not known that he was God himself. So this particular Brahman he got to see, just like how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya got to see that Sadbhuja form. He got confirmed, but he was told not to tell. So he just paid obeisance to the Lord and he stayed. From then on he didn't travel, he stayed in one place. That Brahman is to travel all over. So that was one of the first revelations, where the Lord revealed himself. And he was only a toddler at that time, he was a very little kid. So that's what I understand from my read. Yes, Prabhupada.
So you said your Bhagavatam saying Krishna is the supreme and every other incarnation is like a fraction of Krishna.
Yes.
What is Lord Chaitanya's status on that? Is he
No, that is the first thing that I read. That is there is one verse in the Bhagavatam that says, Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yajnai Sankirtana Praye Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. That is Srimad Bhagavatam verse 11.5.32. And the exact translation is, in the age of Kali, intelligent persons who form congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the name of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself, is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions.
also an
That is Srimad Bhagavatam.
avatar?
Yeah, he is an avatar. He is Krishna himself. He's not a form of Krishna. He's Krishna himself, come in the form of, with the mood and color of Radharani, molten gold. But he's Krishna himself. He's not an avatar of Krishna. He's himself Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
I just like to say that all the incarnations are inside Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just like they are in Krishna. And I have a question. I read it a long time ago, but I just wanted to make sure. When you mentioned about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Keshava, Bharati,
Yeah, he took.
Kashmiri, right? Kashmiri.
Yes.
That the disciples laughed. I don't remember hearing.
Yes, it is there. I read it in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya with Prabhupada. The question was that the disciples of Mahaprabhu in the grammar school, he was a grammar teacher, laughed when he defeated Kashmiri by saying that Lord Shiva, it looks like Lord Shiva's wife has two husbands. The kids started laughing.
I misunderstood. What I thought it was Kashmiri's.
No, Keshava Kashmiri was talking to
I
Mahaprabhu.
know who's talking, and I just thought I misunderstood when you said it. I thought you said his students, not Chaitanya. I thought it was
Yeah.
he.
And I was listening to one of these lectures and I thought that was very cute. I was listening to one of my Guru Maharaj lectures and he says to worship Krishna, you don't need any qualification but sincere love and a sincere desire to I wrote it down even because I thought, so I'll quote him, this is his quotation, not mine. He says that, we can be anything, like we don't need to. Okay, the Lord will reciprocate. Our only qualification is to our sincerity and desire to surrender are the only thing, and the Lord will reciprocate. You need no other qualification. He says Gajendra was an elephant, Hanuman was a monkey, Jatayu was a bird, and Shabari was an old woman in the forest. Kolavecha Sridhar was in poverty. The Brahmin in Sri Rangam was illiterate. So none of these people had any really great qualifications. But the Lord, and Gajendra was an elephant. So whatever kind of body you have, whatever you have, the desire, the sincere desire to please the Lord and serve the Lord is the only thing that's required. There's no other qualification required, especially in Kali Yuga. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advent is so important, and Prabhupada's advent is even more important to Kali Yuga souls like us. Because if it was not for Prabhupada, do we think we would have any of this information? Even Chaitanya Charitamrita, if it's in Bengali, who's going to read it? Only because it's in English, we're able to read it now and get the benefit of that. Srimad Bhagavatam, all these great scriptures that Prabhupada translated, is available to every person in the world today. And that's only because of Prabhupada. So can you imagine the importance of Prabhupada in terms of world history and also importance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Because he made us Vrindavan Leela accepts. The only way you can get into Vrindavan Leela is if you follow in the footsteps of one of the residents of Vrindavan. That's the only way. So if you don't have information, how are you going to follow? In Vaikuntha, there's only Narayana. He doesn't have friends. He doesn't have, paramours. He doesn't have parents. It's only in Vrindavan that Krishna has parents. Krishna has equals. People who are Krishna considers greater than him. His friends don't even think he's God because Yogamaya covers them. They don't even know he's God. They fight with God. In fact, he takes a submissive role. He has to carry somebody on his shoulder. He's carrying his father's shoes on his head. His mother is chasing him with a stick. So he is subordinate to his devotees, and that's only in Vrindavan. And that's the highest where the love in Vrindavan. And Madhavendra Puri's stature, I said, he was the Kalpavraksha. And he's so great, his position is so great in our Sampradaya. And none of this would be available to us if it wasn't for Prabhupada. So we all owe Prabhupada a great debt. Yes, Prabhupada, I think my time is up. You'll have to answer your own question, like Ramananda Roy said.
2 comments and 1 question.
Prabhu, like Ramananda Roy said to the Lord, you were doing the question and the answers, you'll have to do the same thing.
2 comments and 1 question.
Sure.
The first comment is, in Bengal they did realize that Lord Chaitanya was God, because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita there's a pastime where thousands of people were calling for Lord Chaitanya to come out as God because he was God, and Srivas Pandit says, you tried to quiet me when I called you God, now you're going to go put your hand over everybody's mouth? So that's indicated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Second comment is, in Vaikuntha there is some Sakyaras, but it's adulterated with awe and reverence. The examples given are Vibhishan and Sugriva, who were friends of Ramchandra, but they had great awe and reverence, not as you described in Vaikuntha, where they'll, what kind of big man are you?
Yeah. No, I was thinking of Narayan Vaikuntha. Like, I know there are very different Vaikunthas where there is Ram and where there is Nrsimhadev. I was thinking where Narayan and Lakshmi reside, you know that.
But in Vaikuntha in general.
Yeah.
But here's my question. You're explaining that only God can give love of God. So, but any avatar of God can give love of God. So you're explaining Lord Chaitanya came and gave a very special love
of God. No, I was saying the Vrindavan pastimes.
Right, so now my question is, what is the method that he gave us so that we can achieve that love of God? Because everyone else is also, all other incarnations are giving methods to achieve that adulterated love of God. How does Lord Chaitanya teach us to achieve this Braj praying?
It's chanting mainly, it's chanting.
But chanting is in every age.
So I say that question again, I don't think I understood your
Chanting
question.
is in every age.
Yes.
So what is the special way that Lord Chaitanya is teaching that allows us to achieve Braj praying?
To follow in the footsteps of one of the residents of Vrindavan. That's the only way in. There's no other way.
What does that mean in terms of our chanting?
We have to follow in the footsteps of Mother Yashoda to have that paternal love develop in our heart. We have to follow the footsteps of, say, one of the friends of Krishna in order to gain that. That's my understanding. We don't choose, the Lord chooses. From what I understood, you have to just chant and do your thing. And when you reach that highest stage, it will be revealed to you. It's not like I can say, oh, I want to be a friend of the Lord, so I will pretend I'm a friend. Or I want to be the mother of the Lord and I'll pretend something.
So I understand that.
That has to be revealed to us from my understanding.
Okay, but then...
We don't aspire for it.
So here I am, neophyte stage, I can't think like that. But what is the method I can chant that will lead me to that platform?
That's definitely one way. That is the only way, probably.
Well, Prabhupada, Lord
Because to my understanding, we don't pick our roles of what you want to be. I want to be a parent of the Lord. I want to be the servant of the Lord.
I'm not.
That's revealed to us.
That's not what I'm saying.
Then
I'm saying that Lord Chaitanya came and gave a specific method of cultivation while we chant that will lead us to Braj praying? That's what I'm asking.
That is Tronadapi Sunita.
Say again?
Sankirtana Yajna. No, you give the answer, Prabhu, I don't know.
Not me, but I'll tell what Prabhupada said. And that's Vipalamba Seva. When Prabhupada said, the more we feel separation from Krishna, the more we make advancement. Lord Chaitanya, if you look at Lord Chaitanya's pastime, his chanting, his whole absorption was in the mood of separation. And that was the mood that allows one to achieve Braj praying. So we chant in the mood of feeling separation from Krishna.
But for that, you have to reach a certain point.
But we may not feel separation, but we can pray.
We
Let
can
me at least
cultivate,
feel separation, because that's the path that Lord Chaitanya brought.
Well, thank you, Prabhu. That's good to know. Thank you. Hare Krishna. You have, say that again? From Krishna. We have to feel the separation from the Lord. That's what he says. And chant in a mood of separation in order to advance in the path of bhakti. Yes, Prabhu. I think we are late. I don't want to be getting into trouble. Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
When the mothers were going to sacrifice for marital boom to Lord Shiva, and Krishna more or less seized their sacrifice and permitted them to satisfy them. Then whether the mothers...
You're talking in Chaitanya Leela
Yeah, I'm talking
or Krishna Leela?
the
Oh, no. This is one of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he was a little kid, when he was 8 years old, when he had just started school, he would go to the Ganges, and in the olden days, people would bathe in the Ganges. So the men would bathe in one side, the women would bathe in a different side, ghats. And he would exchange their clothes. When you get into the river, you put your clothes on the banks, right? So he would take the women's clothes and put it where the men were bathing, and where the women were bathing, he would move so he would switch, in other words. So when they came out from their bath, they didn't have clothes to wear. Because it wasn't their clothes. So when a man comes, he finds a sari instead of a dhoti, and vice versa. So, you know what I mean?
women were going to perform...
That the young girls used to perform to get a good husband. In India, sometimes to get a good husband, they worship in a certain way so they were worshipping Lord Shiva and Katyayani to get a good husband. And he would say, give me the offerings, I will give you a good husband, otherwise I'll give you an old husband and
The question is, were they satisfied by Krishna seizing their offerings?
In the beginning, they were upset a little bit, but then they really felt happy because he is the Supreme Lord. They would complain to his mother, but when the mother was chastising, then they would say, no, don't, he's a nice boy, don't hurt him, So even though in one sense they would complain about him, when they actually saw their father or mother coming with a stick, they'll say, oh, Nimai, run away, your mother is coming. So they would actually assist him in escaping the punishment. So it's similar to Krishna. When the gopis complained to Mother Yashoda, he's stealing our butter, and Mother Yashoda is scolding, then say, no, don't scold, let him have the butter. We actually make the butter for him. So really they love him. Because they say every living entity loves God. There is no... See, when a person is dead, we don't love the dead body. The only reason we love somebody is because of their spirit soul is part of God. Really, when you think about it, every love is love for God. Whether it's our children, whether it is somebody else we're loving. So the spirit is what we love. The soul is what we love. Once the soul has left the body, it's just a material body. So all love is for God. We don't realize that. So that's why the residents of Vrindavan, every woman loved Krishna more than their own child. That doesn't happen in the material. You don't love the neighbor's child better than your child. You love your own child better. It only happens in Vrindavan because Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So they love Krishna better than their own children. So when that 1 year when Brahma steals the cows and when the Krishna expands as all the cowherd boys, that year the mothers loved even more their own children, and they couldn't understand why. Normally they loved Krishna more. They didn't love their children as much as Krishna. But that particular year, they were all loving their own children also the similar way. That's because it was Krishna himself. So really we love Krishna. Everybody loves Krishna. Krishna is the only object of love. And even we love human beings because they are part of Krishna. That's an extension of our love for Krishna is what we are loving our friends, our children, whoever are related to us, because of their soul. And that soul belongs to Krishna. The soul is part of Krishna. Anyway, that's my understanding. I'm not saying I'm feeling it, but technically that is the explanation. It's not that we feel it, because we are still in our bodily concept. We are not on that spiritual concept where we are looking at everybody as spirit souls. We are thinking we are our body. But once we cross that and we realize that everybody is, the spirit soul is what is lovable, not the body. Then when you reach that platform, that's that thing that you see everybody as same. Vidya Vinaya Sampanni, Brahmine Gavi Hastine, Sunichaiva Pakecha, Pandita Samadarshana, that shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Once you reach that platform, you see a cow, a dog eater, an elephant, a Brahmin, everybody's same, because the soul is same in everybody. So you don't look at the external, you look what is internal when you reach that stage. Of course, we have not reached that stage. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.